Hello, this is your investigative reporter back on the Learning Channel. Here to talk about the white woodpecker, slowly pecking away at your freedom and humanity. There's some things going on an economic level, on a world level, geopolitical level that we need to understand. So we're going to talk about how woodpeckers can do some damage. You can imagine in your house a woodpecker pecking on your side of your home and doing some damage, and over time it's going to get worse. Well, the red-headed white woodpecker, how much damage can it really do economically, socially, politically? A whole lot. Just like it's a pest on your house, it's a pest on the world scheme of things. I say the red states and the red-headed woodpecker because Republican states, which are red, have a certain agenda. The agenda is Project 2025 right now. It's been a Southern strategy in the past. So these white policies are doing whatever they can to dismantle equality in our so-called democracy. White policies, they ushered in actually something negative. Larry Favors Daniels talks about WEI policies. She calls WEI white, entitled, and inept. White, entitled, and inept. That's what we have running the government. People aren't even qualified, no merit. Just people who are going to be sycophants and people who are going to follow the narcissistic mentality of the current leadership. Not good. So woodpeckers, we got to get rid of these woodpeckers. I'd like to acknowledge Greg Pallas. He's a investigative journalist. So hats off to him, as I have a hat on like his trademark. But he wrote an article called Larry Summers, Epstein and the Endgame Memo. So if you get a chance to check out his work, he's done 2 documentaries. One called The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. We know that's what's going on with the dark money behind politics. He also did a film called Vigilantes Incorporated, America's New Vote Suppression Hitmen. Goes into really what happened down here in Georgia with the current governor and his involvement and his family background, and how these people are put in place to make things happen on a grand scheme. So definitely check out Greg Pallas and his work. So he uncovered this guy named Larry Summers. It's not really some guy. Lawrence Summers is like a woodpecker in the White House. He's been involved as the chief economist of the World Bank. He's been deputy secretary of Treasury. He's been director of White House's, actually, he was the first director, I think, new director of the White House's National Economic Council. And he served under both Clinton and Obama. So he did the damage under the Clinton administration and carried it on with Obama, which means Obama hired him to do that. He was also past president of Harvard. If you did not know, he's the one of the people who had a beef with Cornel West. Cornel West was doing some spoken word and some hip-hop connections with some artists, and this president's saying that he's belittling his academic career by doing those types of things. They bickered back and forth. But this Jewish person in the White House is caught up in Epstein trials, Epstein Files, Epstein Web. That means he was messing around with them little white girls, or he was also trying to get some advice from this sex offender. What I'm saying to you is, it's beyond just this sex trafficking. It's about global economic manipulation of things. There's a book by John Perkins called Hoodwinked. John Perkins also wrote his first book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. He was paid to go around and destabilize governments by getting people to take these so-called structural adjustment programs, destabilizing, destroying economies. Listen to this from his chapter on double standards out of Hoodwinked. It says, Economic Hitman reveals why the world financial markets imploded and what we need to do to remake them. A brief assessment of the economic team President Obama assembled tells the story. Timothy Geithner, former chairman of the New York branch of the Federal Reserve and Obama's Treasury Secretary. Larry Summers, ex-chief economist for the World Bank, Treasury Secretary under Bill Clinton. and the new director of the White House's National Economic Council, and Paul Volcker, retired Federal Reserve chairman and now a top economic advisor to Obama, were some of the key architects of the double standard policies forced on developing countries years ago. When those nations experienced economic problems and were unable to make their loan payments, they were forced to accept, quote, structural adjustment plans that mandated that client countries drastically reduce government spending, raise interest rates, privatize sectors of their economies, and sell national assets to multinational corporations. We see it happening today. So, SAP, or the structural adjustment programs, have been severely condemned by political and social scientists around the world because there's 9 things. I'll try to run through them quickly. 1. Threaten national sovereignty and undermine the democratic process by transferring control to foreigners. That's what they want to do in Venezuela right now. 2. They benefit the largest donors, especially the United States, European Union, Canada, and Japan, whose corporations end up owning the privatized sectors and whose financial institutions receive high interest rate payments. Check out a DVD or a movie called Corporation. At the very end of that, it talks about how one of those governments got rid of those people who wanted to take their water supply and run their water and manage their water. So it can be fought against, but that's an example in the movie Corporation. 3, privatize resources that have been in the public domain, like I said, taking people's water. And now you got people from other countries running your water in your land. 4, encourage foreign corporations to exploit workers and corrupt local officials as they lobby for lax environmental and labor regulations and tax loopholes. That's why a lot of these companies leave the United States and go to other places to run their operations. 5, discourage agriculture and land reform, thereby protecting aristocracies and facilitating the growth of slums and poverty. That's why you have a lot of places that are throughout the world, seems like they can't develop. They can't develop because they have these programs that deny them access to funds. 6, increase the use of fertilizers, Monsanto, and pesticides, Monsanto, that damage the environment and make farmers dependent on foreign chemical companies. Devastating. 7, force cutbacks on health, education, and other social services by diverting money to interest payments. Just think about that, diverting all these black women that were relieved and removed from the government. There's a lot of black women working in the government. So you're removing and cutting back health and education. CDC, got rid of CDC basically. What is this government doing? Nothing but slashing and dashing. 8, disenfranchise women who dominate workforce in the education, health, and other services, social services. 9, cause the abandonment of women and children as rural men migrate to cities and other countries. So all this migration going on with Mexico and these other places. What are they going to do? They don't have jobs. These structural adjustment programs dismantled how those economies are running. So look at this. The most important criticism is that they do not work. These programs do not work. Or restated, SAP do not help the countries pull out of recessions. In fact, they drive them deeper into crisis. The proof? Geithner, Summers, Volcker, and friends, Obama's team urging the United States to adopt solutions to our recession that are completely counter to those imposed on the third world. These big banks and these automotive industries were bailed out, but you're not going to bail out the countries, but it's like a double standard. So, in conclusion with this particular chapter, the knowledge that Washington and its allied financial institutions knowingly undermine so many sovereign nations has had severe long-term negative impacts on the United States' standing in the world. People don't respect the United States anymore. BRICS is going on all over the world now, where other countries are saying, no longer are we going to use the dollar. The message that our strategies are directed at exploiting rather than assisting countries has caused a disturbing rift between those who provide the resources and those who consume them. The political divide, in turn, plays a role in further exacerbating the economic crises. We have to read. If not, we're going to be exploited and not knowing what's being done to us. So that's where we have to start. And you have to start looking at what are the people that keep on being at the top. Robert Rubin, Jewish. I think Larry Summers, Jewish. The next person we'll talk about, Larry Cohen, Jewish. It's like, why are they always in the mix of run the economy. His book, the subtitle, How Jews Gained Control of the Black American Economy, manipulating the resources and the flow of the money, and they manage it and control it, and we don't have anything. That's problematic. So this Summers guy was caught up in Epstein Files, doing some things, and he's now being ridiculed. You got this guy, Larry Cohen. I'm not saying he had anything to do with Jeffrey Epstein, but again, he's now a person in the media controlling how music is being displayed. He used to lead Def Jam Records. If you see, that's Russell Simmons right there. Russell Simmons and Rick Rubin, Jewish guy. Russell Simmons. Rick Rubin, Russell Simmons, they gave their business over to Larry Cohen, Jewish guy. So he then had Def Jam change to Polygram, and then they went to Universal. And so now he's also the CEO of Warner Music Group, and he's now the global head of music for YouTube. Look, this guy promotes thug music and raunchy lyrics about black people. Not Jewish people, black people. Megan Thee Stallion, all this stuff, this booty butt music. When you think about the thug mentality, the reason why I'm showing this image here with this media mogul controlling how music is being distributed, this rap music, this trap music is putting kids in a certain mentality of just thinking on a lower level. I got this brother right here from Morehouse College. He actually tried to choke out a sister from Clark Atlanta University. 2 HBCUs. Brother against a sister. Scared to fight the white man, but can attack one another. Doesn't make any sense. Brother gonna try to choke out a defenseless sister, so I'm showing this. He's been arrested since. But it's that music, that thug music, it's that lower level vibration that people are on and don't really know who the real enemy is. That's a problem. So go ahead and check out who this guy, Larry Cohen, is in the background, how he's just trying to make money. He's not worried about what the people are going through. So this guy, Jeffrey Epstein, he's also trying to make money, not worry about the people, what they're going through. So beyond the sex trafficking, he was also linked to money laundering and weaponry. Now, not by himself. Epstein, Jewish, funded by the Israelis. Might have been a spy, but we don't talk about it. If it was Russia, you'd be all on top of that. We'd all be investigating what's going on with this. But since it's Israel, gave him a pass. So he was unallied in 2019. His picture's 2012. Those brothers are from Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast. So somehow he was over there trying to get weaponry and a so-called surveillance system implemented in Cote d'Ivoire. So the Woodpecker is now in the Ivory Coast. Epstein knew family members of this leadership since 2002, so he goes way back. I'm saying that because I want to show you a movie of something that relates to maybe what he was doing way back then. Epstein and this guy named Uyad Baruch, a specialist in war profiteering. Now, when you see that Barack, there are some pictures of Barack Obama and Jeffrey Epstein. I think it's doctored, it's like AI generated, it's not real, because I don't think they knew one another. But it's really this guy, Ehud Barak, that were connected to Jeffrey Epstein. He was also caught up in beating the little white girls down, and he's implicated in that those Epstein Files. So the new Ivorian president, Ayatora, who had a long career as an economist at the International Monetary Fund, again, IMF, controlling that money, dictating how countries going to run, and a reputation as a technocrat, traveled to Jerusalem, I'm talking to Israel for, to meet Defense Minister Ehud Barak and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and discuss cooperation in science, technology, and counterterrorism. The Israeli tentacles are all up in Africa, now controlling how those countries are operating. The following month, an Israeli delegation visited Cote d'Ivoire to field Oakura's questions about Israel's security apparatus and rebuilding the Ivorian presidential army. It had some problems with elections, people revolted. Now he's trying to stay in power and going to the Israelis looking for some surveillance system and weapons. So this ain't nothing to do with no sex trafficking. This has to do with money laundering, money and financing of a certain mindset. So the Woodpecker scandal is way more than sex trafficking. It's to destabilize places like Africa. It's to cripple the operation of nations so they can't function. So you got to know the names, got to know the people. You got to know all these sports figures, you know all these football, basketball players' names, but you need to know the people who are doing damage to your livelihood. That's Brock on the left side. That's Epstein right there. That's Netanyahu. They're all implicated. Brock is in the midst of all that, caught up in them sex trafficking files, beating up them little white girls. So there was a movie called Lord of War. It was done in 2005. Like I said, Epstein was involved with Ivory Coast people since 2002. That picture wasn't until 2012, but this here is about Ukrainian connections and the dismantling of Soviet Union and people selling weaponry after that. I want to show you a little clip of this to kind of put in perspective about behind the scenes, what's really going on with weapons and defense.
There are over 550 million firearms in worldwide circulation. That's one firearm for every 12 people on the planet. The only question is, how do we arm the other 11? Selling guns is like selling vacuum cleaners. You make calls, pound the pavement. I supplied every army but the Salvation Army.
Can you bring me the gun of Rambo?
Part 1, 2, or 3?
I've only seen part 1.
By the mid-'80s, my weapons were represented in 8 of the world's top 10 war zones.
Damn, you are good.
You get rich by giving the poorest people on the planet the means to continue killing each other.
Guys!
Say what you like about warlords and dictators, they always pay their bills on time.
I would tell you to go to hell, but I think you're already there.
This is your plane?
I'm in transport.
That's what I want.
She doesn't know how you pay for all this.
We don't talk about it. How many car salesmen talk about their work? I'm not saying I didn't have setbacks.
There are men going through our garbage cans. Is there anything I should be worried about?
No, nothing. The first and most important rule of gun running is never get shot with your own merchandise.
Is everything okay?
Rough day at the office. We're the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Let me guess, this isn't about the alcohol or the tobacco. Where there's a will, there's a weapon.
You know, they call me the Lord of War, but perhaps it is you.
It's Warlord.
Thank you, but I prefer it my way.
Is this how you want to be remembered?
I don't want to be remembered at all.
So you hear those terms, warlord, like black people are always the warlords, or why isn't Trump, who's shooting innocent people in the middle of the ocean on fisher boats, a warlord? So they flip the script. Black people are always the warlords in Africa. That Rambo comment. I don't know if you ever saw a movie called Blood Diamond with Leo DiCaprio. He was also over in Africa, giving them weapons. Why? Destabilizing the country. In there, they had a brother who was one of the, I guess, gangsters over there in Africa, and he asked Leo DiCaprio, "I want cable so I can watch Baywatch." This brother wanted to watch Rambo. They're looking at our stuff. The media, the manipulation, whoever controlling Hollywood is now guiding people seeing in the films, hey, that's what I want to be. John Perkins' other book called The Secret History, American Empire. He has a segment in here, a chapter called The Least Understood Continents. That's Africa. Look at this. 43 of the 53 African nations suffer from chronic hunger and low income levels. Famine and drought periodically plague large areas. Mineral resources are exploited by foreign industries that take advantage of lax regulations and corrupt officials to avoid investing their profits locally, thus perpetuating weak economies and incompetent governments. People are driven to violence, ethnic conflict, and civil war. We kind of don't pay attention to what created that. these economic policies that the European white folks are the woodpeckers are kind of creating. The slave trade was arguably the most horrific and destructive act by men against men in a long history of human brutality. So there's a mindset that those people are real. U.S. ignorance about Africa is ingrained in our educational system, including the mainstream media. It is calculated because we do not know. We do not care. Because we do not care, these countries are open territory for mistreatment, even more than those that fall within our radar. So basically, invisible people can be driven off their lands, imprisoned, and executed. And it's exactly what the Israelis have done to the Palestinians. So this warlord mentality and looking at black leaders as pariahs or a problem, this is Idi Amin. He's from Uganda. He was a very important person after independence when the British were kicked out. But he was called a cannibal. He was called a ruthless warlord. All that. But it probably wasn't that severe, although if we look at a movie called The Last King of Scotland, and you read books on him, it's always going to be something that's devastatingly looked at, like he's again, cannibal eating people. So they projected him as somebody bad, but you know what happened? He was kicking out the Indians and the Israelis if you're not putting your money in for the welfare of Ugandan people. Get out, go. Africa for the Africans. That's all he said. That's all he wanted. So the Israelis became kind of disgruntled with that. Indians, they were also upset with that. We watched a movie called Mississippi Masala with Denzel Washington serving as a cleaner there in Mississippi. And the Indian family didn't want their daughter dating this black man. Well, what it was is they felt kind of negative towards African people because they were the ones kicked out of Uganda and had to go other places to be the merchants of other parts of the world. So they had a negative view of African people. So that's how it was played out in that movie, Mississippi Masala. But there's another movie called Raid on Entebbe. You got to check out a book. You got to get John Henry Clark's African World Revolution. Africans at the crossroads. It's like, where do you stand? Which way do you go? He has a chapter here on Raid on Entebbe. I'm going to read a little bit of it, but I want to share this video or trailer about the movie Raid on Entebbe if you have not heard of it. So there's Charles Bronson starring in it, but the brother there is representing Idi Amin, but that's Yaphet Kotto playing him. Let me play a little bit of this video for you.
Welcome to Entebbe, Uganda. We don't want to hurt anyone. We're humanitarians.
The hijackers threaten to kill them all unless their demands are met.
There could be no negotiations with terrorists.
Surprise and speed is the key.
They want the world to watch.
Here we go. Okay, gentlemen. This is it.
Entebbe.
So that was a short clip. You can watch it on your own. I just wanted to share with you that it's a real story, but Hollywood can manipulate it to make it look like they want it to be. And if there are a lot of Jewish people controlling the media, of course, they're going to tell a story that supports the Israeli side. They said Idi Amin was involved in that. John Henry Clark says he probably had no clue about what was going on. Those Palestinians hijacked him in another location and then brought them there to Uganda. Now check it out. Israel was a created state in 1948, a British mandate. One of the places that was offered was Uganda prior to Palestine. They said, nope, not putting us in the middle of Africa. That's where Uganda is. So they actually set up the air controlling system there in Uganda, in Entebbe. So they knew how everything operated. So it was easy for them to go in there and swoop in and basically take over the Palestinians and those Ugandan soldiers and kill them to take over. It says, the Europeans have always been geniuses in their ability to drain the diseased pus of their political sores on the sore of other people and nations. The Jewish problem, in all of its complicated dimensions, is neither Arab or African created. This is a problem that was created in Europe by Europeans and should have been resolved in Europe by Europeans. This is Dr. Jeremy Clark talking about that raid on Entebbe. So he says that from the foregoing pattern, it can be clearly seen that the ruling circles in Israel can be found on the side of colonialism and neocolonialism. Essentially, they were in cahoots with South Africa. South Africa, apartheid. Israel, apartheid. South Africa, controlling the bottom of Africa. Israel, controlling the top of Africa. Strategic to be sure that the European white powers are able to control that part of the world that has all the resources. How could those two places have nuclear weapons, and not other countries in Africa? Strategic. So that's why United States supports Israel, to ensure that they can have control over that part of the world. So again, the raid on Entebbe. Check out Dr. Jeremy Clark's The African World Revolution, Africans at the Crossroads. Be very helpful to understanding this situation. So don't get it twisted in the interpretation saying that I'm saying Idi Amin like it's some angel. All I'm saying is he's talking about Africa for the Africans. So anybody talking that, colonialists and neo-colonialists are going to look at him as a bad person. That means you have to get out there and get out and do something. Get away from these internet all-stars and people on their computer and behind buttons and pushing buttons, but not knowing anything. Got to go travel. I've traveled the world. I've seen things in other countries. I got to be a journalist, but I'm not. But think about people who have traveled the world and seen things during a time period that was very hard to travel. Martin Delany, 1812 to 1885, fought in the Civil War. His brother was an abolitionist, journalist, physician, military officer. He went over there to Africa, West Africa, Liberia, looking for places that we as African people could go. He was a separatist. He was like, look, Africa for the Africans. He's the one that came up with that slogan. So way before Idi Amin, way before Marcus Garvey. So he was talking this about Africa for the Africans. So I'm just saying, let's admire the fact that this brother was working towards how do we now create a positive view of African people having their own. He wrote a book called Blake for the Huts of America. So he was trying to think of ways that, it was like a novel, but he was trying to look at ways that we could create our own, not just civilization, but orientation of the world as proud African people. So Martin Delany, got to know his name. George Washington Williams. George Washington Williams is also a historian, politician, journalist. He was a lawyer and had a stint as a minister and a soldier, just like Martin Delany. He traveled to Africa also. He went to the Congo. He was trying to uncover what was going on with the people in the Congo. King Leopold's ghost. George Washington Williams. Let me read a little segment of this about George Washington Williams. He wrote some documents in the past. It's like, we can write documents today, but his stuff still stands. The document that flows from the man's pen over the next day or two is a milestone in the literature of human rights and of investigative journalism, just like that guy, Greg Palast, saying. People were putting their lives on the front line. That guy, Jamal Khashoggi, which was killed by the Saudi Arabian government in the Turkish embassy, cut up in pieces as a journalist trying to tell the world what's really going on. It is entitled An Open Letter to His Serene Majesty Leopold II, King of the Belgians and Sovereign of the Independent State of Congo, by Colonel Honorable George Washington Williams of the United States of America. George Washington Williams was indeed an American. He was not, however, a colonel, a claim that caused him some problems later on. And he was black. Largely because of that, he has been long ignored. Among the eager throng of visitors drawn to the Congo as Leopold began to exploit it, Williams became the first great dissenter. And like many travelers who find themselves in a moral inferno, he had begun in search of something he hoped would be more like paradise. So he met with presidents. He said, look, I'm going over to Africa. I'm going to do some things. I'm going to make you look good. And so he was a mixer and a mingler. I mean, this brother was all over the world, traveled, and then went to the continent to try to figure things out. This book is written by Adam Hochschild, called King Leopold's Ghost, a story of greed, terror, and heroism in colonial Africa. Got to know who George Washington Williams was. So, back to the white woodpecker, creating problems all over the world. Grand theft is what I'm saying is going on right in front of us. And there seems to be nobody checking anything. That's why we must speak truth to power. They're picking away at our freedom and our humanity. So we must be doing something to fight against that. Affirmative action. Basically destroy it. So there's no equality going to be happening in work settings. Voting Rights Act gutted, meaning that they're not trying to create parity in the voting ranks. And then DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion programs are canceled. Not trying to have a mixture and a mingling of different types of people to enhance society. No, they want it to be the white, milky way of looking at the world. So the white woodpeckers are pecking away at everything that has been done over the years, decades, the civil rights have fought for. So when we say grand theft, look, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, this is right now, and the Trump administration right now have been seeking to bolster Argentine President Javier Milei's pro-reform party when they announced a pair of financial lifelines this fall. So no Scott Bessent, no Trump, no Javier Milei. Know the pictures, know the people, name the names. The package included $20 billion currency swap. Look, this is $20 billion of our tax money going to a racist country that doesn't even have black people. They've significantly erased them from the census like there are no black people there. So many of the people came from the Nazi regime from the World War, and they dismantled and got rid of Nazism, so-called Nazism. Those Germans, some of them went to Argentina. And so they now, I guess you could call them structural adjustment plans, but there's no reason why we should be giving $20 billion to another country when we have our own problems in this country. So we got to name the names. This guy named Sheldon Adelson, I don't know, if you know him. Charles Koch, I don't know if you know him. Peter Thiel, I don't know if you know him. But Elon Musk, you heard of him because he came in /dash, messed up the government and got out. Did he just cancel agencies that were going to be investigating him? More than likely. We just have to be stupid not to know that there was some plans going on like that. And Jeff Bezos, I mean, he runs, Amazon? Runs a whole lot of stuff that, making all this money when people are struggling, but his empire seems to keep growing. Owns the Washington Post, I believe, and didn't want to endorse a candidate during the last election. So you know those names. But Sheldon Adelson, I got this book called Dark Money by James Mayer. Dark Money. Talks about the Koch brothers and the Koch family. They're industrialists. They're like fossil fuel people. So they want to make sure that kind of processing continues on. There's a part in here about Adelson I wanted you to read or understand. It said he is actually a Jewish guy who made money off of the Las Vegas casinos. Well, he funded Newt Gingrich. He provided money for Newt Gingrich and people like that to carry on the ideas of whatever Israel wanted to do. He was going to support. He's passed now. That Sheldon Adelson is gone, but his family's still running the operation. Peter Thiel, this is the guy who funded this guy named J.D. Vance, a plant to get into the White House if something happens to the Manchurian candidate or the orange candidate or whatever you want to call him. If something happens to him, you got somebody in place that can carry on the ideas of this white orientation of controlling the world. The financiers are what going to drive things, not the little people, not the ones who are the people who are the bulk of society, but there's few, little few. So now you got this guy named JD or Junior Varsity Vance, as Brother Greg Carr calls him, in the White House as a vice president. Something happens to Trump. This Peter Thiel guy, who's a venture capitalist, has now funded this administration. That's criminal. So we got to name the names. And I say name the names because that's what Steve Coakley would do. I'm not sure you know Steve Coakley, but we're going to end the day after looking at some more books on Steve Coakley. So we need permanent relief from the white woodpecker. How could that happen? Like I said, a woodpecker tearing up your house, you don't want to just keep pecking and tearing up the wood because it's going to tear up the house. You could kill it, but kind of hard to do, and it probably wouldn't be right to just go kill it. You could block it. I don't know, just maybe cover things up. Where the hole is, it'll come back and create another hole somewhere else. You could poison it. That means it'll never come back. Might be hard to do. They tried to, that is United States government tried to poison Castro, probably hundreds of times, because they said there was 600 events to try to kill him. Assassination attempts. So poison, but we don't want to talk about that. But study its patterns, its history, and thwart the attack. If that woodpecker keeps coming to your house at a certain time, we'll be out there ready to make sure he's not coming. If you know he's coming, do something to make sure that he gets deterred and doesn't want to be there. So in economics and in the nature of these financial programs, we need to know the names of the people that are causing destruction to us. If you don't know the names, you're going to continually get taken advantage of. So, in Confessions of an Economic Hitman, he has a chapter in here on Venezuela saved by Saddam. It's chapter 33. So why is he saying that? Well, the United States was going after Venezuela when Hugo Chavez was there, but they chose to now do something with Saddam Hussein. You know where he's at, dead and gone. That whole Iraqi war, you know that was a fake because it was weapons of mass destruction that were never found, so it wasn't even true. Concocted, manipulated. Same thing's going on now with Maduro in Venezuela. Concocted, manipulated. So when he says save Saddam, it says, and beyond that, it's like a roll call. This is what happened in Iran. It says, this is exactly how the CIA brought down Mossadegh and replaced him with the Shah. The analogy could not have been stronger. It seemed history was uncannily repeating itself. 50 years later, 5 decades, and still, oil was the driving force. That's what's going on in Venezuela. And Saddam Hussein, Iraq, that's what was going on with oil. So, in the final analysis, in the Bush administration situation, it says, the entire sequence of events was a calamity for the Bush administration. Bush administration officials acknowledged Tuesday that they had discussed the removal of Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez for months with military and civilian leaders from Venezuela. The administration's handling of the border coup has come under increasing scrutiny because you know they did have a coup. He was removed, and right around the corner, the people revolted and got him back in power. So America is being too disruptive to other people's governments, and it's a problem. We must address that. And it's kind of hard to address that when these things have been going on for probably say now centuries. There's a book by Michael Bradley called The Iceman Inheritance, Prehistoric Sources of Western Man's Racism, Sexism, and Aggression. So what we have here is this mentality to take and empower and actually be a megalomaniac started in them caves. So all this stuff that's going on with Epstein and the sexism and this military stuff, the aggression and the racism that we see coming from the administration, pecking away at your freedoms, is a history to this. So check out Michael Bradley's Iceman Inheritance. He's a white Canadian writer. Brother King tried to address this. He's like, where do we go from here? Chaos or community? So I was intrigued with the particular chapter he had on Black Power. And reading through it, I mean, he was struggling with where to go, what to do. Stokely Carmichael, Casa Dada Ricks, and talking about Black Power, and he was like, no, that's too dangerous to talk about. So he struggled. W.B. Du Bois struggled to change his views over time. Malcolm X struggled to change his views over time. But let's read, though. These people sacrificed their lives for us to have what we have today. So let's look at what they were talking about. So King was trying to be in forefront. I didn't get a chance to finish this book, but it's called Empires, Crossroads. So beyond Dr. John Reed Clark's Africans at the Crossroads, Empires. So we're talking about what was going on in the Caribbean. A history of the Caribbean from Columbus to the present day. That's why this problem that's going on with Venezuela is disrupting us. Grenada, Trinidad, countries that are going to now side with the United States with that close by neighbor Venezuela creating problems for the Caribbean. These are white man issues. And by us being involved in that, it's making it problematic for those African-run nations, for European-controlled empires to survive. So, crossroads, where do they stand? Because it's not going to go down very well. Venezuela has allies too. Brother Amos Wilson, lastly, talk about his book, Blueprint for Black Power, chapter 13, my favorite number. 13 is, the title of it is The Financial Corporate Elite, New World Governments. World ascendancy of private capital. So those names that I mentioned earlier, Sheldon Adelson, Peter Thiel, Musk, Bezos, these people are the reason why we have all this disconnection with social programs to help people. Amos Wilson broke all that down. He had names. He wrote this back in 98. But the names that he talked about and the people that are doing things right now, he kind of predicted what would be happening. Another brother that kind of broke things down and showed us names and told us names, we're going to conclude on his words because it really does signify how powerful my brother Steve Cokie is now resting in glory. Try to tell us what was happening, just not paying attention. The Woodpecker is continuing to work, and we must study, plan to be able to defeat the enemy. Listen to Brother Coakley.
So Brzezinski says that the only thing that will stop us from succeeding in our global white unity, it says the three cluster theory of world power is what the Foreign Policy magazine talked about. This is on the stands now. I suggest you read it, not because you like it, but this is one of the white boys who speaks for the other white boys. This is Rockefeller's Democratic think tank. Kissinger is Rockefeller's Republican think tank. So when they talk, we don't want to hear them, but we study for clues on what their daddy's saying. These are the king's men. And he says that the only thing that will stop the New World Order is black urban unrest. That means that you the only motherfucking thing that they, no Russian, no nothing, just you. You're the only ones that can whip the wicked witch of the West. We've had to check. We have had the privilege of being risen up with the baddest of all the white boys. The white boys had a fight, and this white boy won right here in America. And I'm glad to be here because I believe somewhere in my life, my destiny was hooked towards slaying the core of negativity. So I'm glad to be here with this one because I perceive this to be one of the baddest that ever emerged in the history of their race. What is it that they want? They want world government, the unifying of the world. This is some white boy publicity we intercepted. They want a responsible world government, a legislative parliament, a world executive administrator, mandatory world courts, a world constitution, and other bunch of shit about some white shit. It's all about some white shit. And they can only pull that off if the world goes with it. So they have now used the United Nations as the engineer of the New World Order, and now it's police force on detail from the Supreme Security Council. Call it what it is. It is the Supreme Security Council, and it is declared it will respect no country's sovereignty. You're in the era of white bestiality. They will recognize no law. In fact, they never had before that anyway. They've just declared that they won't. They have declared they will take Africa. Now, so how much time I got to wait for us to understand that under these overt mechanisms, that means that it's not far from coming, because no longer do they believe something they think they know about us that makes them believe they can do that now.